Back before the internet, if you wanted to learn about the games you played, you had a few options. You could talk with your friends, you could read magazines and books, maybe call the Nintendo Power hotline if your parents let you, and you could read the manual. But these days, since most Switch games don't come with manuals anymore, you're left to rely on your friends and, well, the internet. So don't worry, we got you. I'm Zion from Nintendo Life, and today we'll be sharing with you a massive list of tips and tricks for playing The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Everyone at Nintendo Life has already sunk a shocking amount of time into this game already. So we rounded up a list of things that we wish we knew at the start, but also some things that we may never have learned even 50 hours into the game. Now be aware, this video will contain minor gameplay, environment, and some light story spoilers, so we'd recommend only watching this video after you've left the Great Sky Islands and spent a few hours down in Hyrule. We're just looking out for you. Now with all of that out of the way, let's start out with something you're going to be spending a lot of time doing. Exploring Hyrule and all of its nooks and crannies can be an addictive, just one more thing kind of experience. There are surprises around every corner, Koroks to find. Addison needs your help hanging up signs everywhere. There are people to find with side quests, and there are scary enemies that you might not be ready to fight just yet. So our first genuine tip is to get yourself a notebook. Since Tears of the Kingdom is an open world game, you're going to be roaming all over the place with different quests and objectives, but along the way, you'll discover other things that are trying to pull your attention away from your main quest, and you're not always going to want to follow that path. So either get a real notebook or have a note in your phone that's dedicated just to Zelda stuff, a place where you can write down random bits of information that you learn about side quests or where a secret item might be located. Because the game does a good job of keeping track of side quests, but not everything that you read is logged in the game. It's also a good idea to get in the habit of using the markers on your map. Felix and I actually like to use the little leaf symbol for Koroks that we actually haven't solved yet. Sometimes you'll find a Korok that needs to be carried extremely far away, and you just don't have the patience for that right now. You can also use the little symbol that looks like a person for important NPCs that you want to remember. So regardless of if you choose to use a real pen and paper notebook or something digital in your phone, it'll be helpful and a bit more fun to log your experience. Write down the things that you struggled with and the way that you think the story's gonna go, because it might be fun to reflect on it later on. Now, if you haven't done this already, you'll want to prioritize getting the camera as soon as you can, because obviously, you're gonna want to take a picture of everything. Every animal, every enemy, and every item that you see. As long as a box appears around a character or object when you're looking through the viewfinder of the camera, then you know it's worth taking their picture. It can be a ton of fun filling up your encyclopedia, and there are multiple side quests that you'll need photos for later down the road. Did you know that when you climb certain trees, you'll hang from the top, almost like Mario does in Super Mario 64? Not only does this look cool, it also lets you regain your stamina, and you can also leap off and glide away, which can make this a really helpful tactic when trying to get a better view of an area. Now, we all know by now that when it rains, you're incredibly likely to slip when trying to climb anything. But if you're lucky and happen to notice an area that's being shielded by the rain, you still might be able to climb. Now, in this scene here, it's a complete downpour. But if you look at this structure, it actually happens to be lodged between another wall. But the other side of this structure is completely exposed to the rain, and Link slips every single time. He can't make it anywhere. But if we watch Link climb the other side that's shielded by the rain, Link climbs it almost without fail, maybe slipping only here and there. So if you absolutely have no choice but to climb something in the rain, and you can't wait, maybe you can find yourself a little cheeky loophole. And we know it's incredibly easy to forget, but try to remember that in some instances you can use Ascend to scale tall buildings and mountains as well. Ascend is such a game changer, but it's also a really weird ability, so we wouldn't blame you if you forgot that it was an option every now and then. If you happen to be exploring a cave and don't have the equipment or time to smash all of the ore deposits that you see, we get it. We've been there. But you should at least do your best to stop and break the ones that have a golden sparkle. Now, normal ore deposits sparkle blue, but the gold ones have a higher chance of holding rare gems like sapphires, rubies, and even better yet, diamonds. Try to remember to always keep a rock weapon on you too, but if you find yourself in a situation where you need one, hopefully there's a rock nearby that you can use to make one on the fly. And if you ever find yourself needing rupees, especially in the early game, it can be a good idea to sell off some of your excess gems. In the first 50 hours I spent with the game, there were only a few instances where I actually could use them. So we'd recommend saving a few for later and then selling off the rest. Amber will get you 10, opals will get you 30, topaz will get you 80, rubies will get you 110, sapphires will get you 150, and a diamond will get you a whopping 500 rupees. And speaking of rupees, this is the first mainline Zelda game where you actually have to use the A button in order to pick them up. They aren't automatically added to your inventory when you run over them like they were in the past. You sadly won't get any rupees if you cut grass anymore, but sometimes you can still find one hiding underneath a rock. And if you can get the high ground on a bloopy, you can jump and pull out your bow to activate the slow motion aiming and can get a few easy hits in to nab more rupees. And whenever you find a bloopy, this will also let you know that there's a cave nearby too. Now, as far as we know, every cave will have one bubble frog, and once you found it, defeated it, and collected its bubble gem, a check mark will appear on your map next to the name of the cave, just so you know you've taken care of it. This check mark doesn't have anything to do with treasure or tasks that you still have left unfinished in that cave, though. The check mark only pertains to the bubble gem. And we did confirm that if for some reason you defeat a bubble frog and you forget to pick up the gem and you leave the cave, if you come back later, the bubble frog will just have respawned and you'll have to defeat the frog again to collect the gem. And Felix actually put together a handy video guide all about bubble gems, which you can find a link to in the description down below. Now, you may not always want to, but it's important to put in the extra effort and pick up every little resource you see laying around in Hyrule. You'll use materials for making meals and elixirs, for fusing with weapons, for upgrading your gear, for side quests, and so much more. But there are a few items in particular that we 100% urge you to pick up every chance you get. Bomb flowers are back, and they're one of the most fun and helpful items in the game. And not only can they drastically change the tide of a battle, they'll help save you a lot of time when trying to clear out an area full of rubble. Just remember not to stand too close to the demolition point. I can't tell you how many times I've done this and died. Try to keep your eyes peeled when in dark areas, like caves. Bright bloom seeds can be often found in these environments too, and if you're like me, you'll absolutely fly through them. Every town and every horse stable in Hyrule will have a well that you can jump down into, and if you find one that has a lot of really useful items that you use consistently, it's worth remembering where exactly it is, because those materials will respawn over time, and you'll be able to go back and get more. In the Rauru Settlement ruins, there's a well there that you can find that's full of bright bloom seeds, so I placed a marker on my map to help me remember where it is. Your base camp, Lookout Landing, also has a well, and it has a lot more to offer, so it's worth popping back in every now and then to see what's new and to take advantage of the amenities. There's a bed that you can always sleep in for free. Kosi is always hard at work down in the bunker cleaning up and making new weapons for you. You'll always be able to find a torch in the guard's room near the gate. There's a goddess statue that you can trade in your light blessings with, a cooking pot so you can whip up some tasty meals and elixirs. There's a steward construct who's happy to help you make some new energy wells. Hestu eventually makes their way here as well after you find him roaming around the land, and you can even make a horse stable if you can figure out how to help them build it. And on occasion, you can find a merchant outside selling various goods. Horse stables, though, also offer a wide selection of items and resources you can rely on. Most offer new side quests, and you can find new meal recipes on some of their walls as well. And most importantly, you can now earn pony points. Each stable across Hyrule will reward you with 1 pony point the first time you check in with the clerk, and you can also earn points by just staying the night at one as well. You can net some cool items, fabric, the ability to stay in a special bed, and early on, this is how you acquire the towing harness for your horse. There are tons of shrines sprinkled throughout Hyrule once again, and when you're out and about exploring, you may not always have the mental energy to run through an entire shrine, but it is worth at least stopping to activate it so you can fast travel to it later down the road if you need. And with how limitless the physics system is in Tears of the Kingdom, some of the shrine puzzles have some pretty wild solutions. And thankfully, they can often be solved in multiple ways. In this shrine, I found that you can either attach a rocket to a minecart and then bomb straight across the gap with it, or you can fly up into the air with a minecart and a rocket and then glide down with your paraglider safely to the other side. I also found a Korok puzzle where I needed to fill the gap in a ring of rocks with another rock. However, I couldn't find an extra rock nearby. But you know what I did have in my inventory? I had a rock-fused weapon. So I dropped it on the ground, moved it into place with Ultra Hand. It worked! How cool is that? In Tears of the Kingdom, Link has a brand new Princess Mononoke-esque arm, and it's incredibly versatile, but it can be pretty tricky to figure out sometimes. So let's help explain some potential uses. The ability Ultra Hand can be used to pick up objects all over Hyrule, and if Link's arm is compatible with an item, it'll glow orange when the arm is activated. This means that you can use it almost like a magnesis metal detector to look for objects and treasures scattered about. This could help you find a treasure chest hidden in the dirt, snow, or even at the bottom of a pond. And if you do find a treasure chest or an item that's just out of reach, try using Ultra Hand to attach an item to the chest and see if that'll help. Especially if you find a chest that's lodged at the bottom of a lake, if you attach a log to it, it should float up to the surface, making it much easier to grab a hold of. Early on in the game, you're taught that you can attach bright bloom seeds to arrows, and you can shoot them to light up an area, but you can also just throw them by holding the R button, then pressing up on the D-pad. This will give you the option to select an item to toss, and you can toss it wherever you want. You won't get as much distance as shooting your bow, but you'll save a lot of arrows this way. And since we're on the topic of saving resources, you can also break open wooden barrels and boxes without wasting weapons or arrows by picking them up with Ultra Hand, lifting them high up in the air, and then dropping them just straight on the ground to break them open. You can also do this with metal barrels and boxes too, and I usually try to speed up the process a bit by dropping one on top of another to get a good old 2-for-1 special. It doesn't always work on the first try, but thankfully you can just pick it up and drop it again, and eventually it'll break. You can also use Ultra Hand to grab mushrooms and bomb flowers that are growing out of reach on a wall above you in a cave. I can't tell you how many times in the early game I would try to climb up a wall to grab a bomb flower and then I would just fall anyways. So please, learn from my mistakes. And speaking of making things that you probably shouldn't, the fuse mechanic also lets you make some really crazy stuff, but it can also be kind of intimidating. And you may not always want to test out new fusions when you could just save your resources for something else down the road. But honestly, just play around with the fuse mechanic, get weird and have fun with it. Reading material descriptions will help give you a better idea of what you can do best with certain items as well. For example, if you attach a monster eye to an arrow, it'll fly like a homing missile at your enemy. But you don't have to use this for just bad guys either. You can actually use this to make shooting a dragon a bit easier if you're on the hunt for a toenail or a scale or whatever dragon part it is that you're looking for. A Bokoblin arm on its own does 20 damage, and it's pretty fragile. It'll get destroyed in just a couple of hits. But you can actually attach 2 of these together, and it won't make it any less fragile, but it will deal 40 damage with each hit instead. It's a good idea to try to keep one of these on hand and use it whenever you end up fighting a big bad guy. And if you haven't already tried to fuse a minecart to a shield, well, just go give that one a shot. Always try to keep in mind that items on the ground that can be picked up with Ultra Hand and that can't be put in your pocket, like rocks, slabs of ice, and bomb barrels, can also be fused. So take advantage of them when you can. If you haven't already, try fusing Amber or a Lizalfoss tail to a sword and see what happens. It's easy to forget about Zonai charges, as they're really only used for a few different things. You can use them to restore some energy to your battery meter on the fly when using Zonai technology, but we think they're better spent on the Zonai device dispenser, the big Zonai gacha machines. You can cash these in to get Zonai capsules, which give you one-time use Zonai parts wherever you are. You can get things ranging from gliders to rockets, springs, fans, and much more. Depending on how many Zonai charges you put into the machine determines how many Zonai capsules you get in return. For example, inserting 1 Zonai charge into the machine gets you 1 Zonai capsule, and inserting 5 cores gets you 12 capsules. But there are also large Zonai charges. Inserting one of these gets you a whole 10 capsules. And if you do 5 at once, you'll get 60 capsules. Here's a quick breakdown on screen of how many capsules you get depending on which Zonai charges you use and how many you insert. In our opinion, it's definitely worth saving up some until you have enough worth cashing in for. Who out here loves the wing gliders? I think they look awesome. But for the longest time, I had no idea how they worked. They're super fun to fly around on, but they're really finicky and tricky to understand. And if you attach a few fans to one and think that it's gonna fly, well, unfortunately, you and your sorry bum and the weight of the glider is just too much, and it ain't moving off the ground. But if you pick one up using Ultra Hand, then move it out over the ledge of a cliff, then bring it back and set it down, stand on it, and then use recall, it'll fly back up into the air. And then you can stop recall and you'll glide down on it gracefully. You don't even have to attach fans, but if you do, they will help you get more air, and you can also add a control stick for even better movement. And if you happen to already be in the air and you have a wing glider capsule in your inventory, you can try dropping it and then landing on the glider to regain your stamina. But your mileage with this is probably going to vary. I tried this a lot, and I often waste a lot of gliders, as it can be pretty tricky to nail down. If you want to experiment with this, we recommend saving your game and then reloading it after you've played around with the wing glider capsules. We'd hate for you to waste them all for nothing. It's also worth mentioning that when you're trying to make a creation that you're planning to drive, sail, or fly through the air, if you have trouble getting something that you built off the ground, see if you have any parts that you can cut from the build while still keeping it functional. Or maybe you can swap parts in for something lighter. If the ground floor of your airship is made of a rock slab, maybe you can swap it out for a wooden plank instead. I don't think I'm the most qualified to give advice on combat, but considering the fact that I often do get pummeled by Ganon's minions, maybe there are a few things that I can teach you that I've learned along the way. The shield has always been an incredibly important part of Link's arsenal, and while it can be easy to overlook it, as it's not convenient to use when wielding a two-handed weapon, we really can't overstate how much protection it can give you. If you block an incoming attack, your opponent could be left completely wide open for a smack to the face with your gloom-stricken sword. And if you can get the timing down, parrying attacks with your shield by using the A button can really change the tide of battle in your favor. And when it comes to using your bow, just like in Breath of the Wild, nailing headshots can stun an enemy in an instant. So just like in a zombie shooter, aim for the head. Unless you're fighting a stone talus, then aim for the gem? Most enemies will die if they hit water, so if you have a way to catapult them into it, that could be a solid strategy against a tough enemy. I was still pretty early on in the game when I first discovered the Lanayru Road East Cave, and inside was a pack of black and blue bokoblins, but I wanted to try and take them on anyways, so I used a few arrows and bomb flowers, and I accidentally sprung a few of them into the water. And since they can't swim, they died pretty quick. And then you can actually jump into the water and pick up anything they drop as well. You can also turn a weapon into a fan and get the same effect, but it won't work as well if you do this on the side of a cliff though. The enemies will probably die, but you might not get their stuff. Now, Keese can be pretty annoying in Tears of the Kingdom, as they have a tendency to just pop out of seemingly nowhere. But next time you come face to face with one, try blocking their attack with your shield and see what happens. And then take that last tip that we gave you and try and roll those together and see how it works. Now, this last batch of tips we're holding on to in case if you, for some reason, haven't went and got the camera or really explored much of Hyrule yet. We want to make sure that you get to experience this for yourself and that we don't spoil it for you. Hey, this is your time to turn around. Have you left? Are you still here? Okay, then you probably know what we're going to talk about. In the manual for the original Legend of Zelda on NES and Famicom, the dungeons are described as underground labyrinths. And since Breath of the Wild in many ways feels like a spiritual successor of that original Zelda game, it's incredible to see that the team managed to implement these original Zelda ideas in Tears of the Kingdom, but as the depths. This is a dark and scary place where enemies are consumed by gloom and glow red. There's darkness everywhere, and if you happen to step on the gloom, it'll steal your health from you and it won't let you take it back. In the depths, you'll discover these giant light sources called light roots, and when you activate them, they'll give you an access point that you can travel back to, and they'll also light up a small portion of the area. Now, this may sound like weird advice, but I want to recommend that you don't rush to light them all up. Personally, my favorite part of the depths is how much tension and fear the underground can make you feel. It's exhilarating. I love the feeling of not knowing what's ahead, then stumbling upon a new treasure or a monument. If you were playing a horror game and were able to turn the in-game lights on, it would ruin a major part of the atmosphere. So hang with the darkness as long as you can and just take your time. One way that you can make exploring the depths a lot easier is by making a vehicle. Scattered all over the depths are these sort of monuments that just have random vehicle parts littered about. And if you're using a vehicle and drive over some gloom, it won't actually affect you. The same goes for riding on a stall horse if you can manage to steal one from a bokoblin. And one more thing when it comes to vehicles. When given the opportunity, always put headlights on your vehicle. And if for some reason you can't, or you want to save some battery power, you can actually attach bloom flowers to the front as well, and those will light up the area around your vehicle. It'll make exploring the depths a lot easier. And wait, is that a bomb flower over there on the ground next to a tree? Well, we better grab that while we can. Now, before we let you get back to playing Tears of the Kingdom, I want a quick talk about amiibo. All of the original Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild amiibo, all of the Zelda amiibo in existence, will net you some kind of rewards for this game. We have a full list of every amiibo over on nintendolife.com. I'll leave a link in the description down below if you want to go check that out. Now, in Breath of the Wild, there was a lot of cool stuff locked behind amiibo, but in Tears of the Kingdom, you can actually find a lot more of this stuff in the wild. So if there's a certain piece of gear that a friend told you about that they got through an amiibo, don't worry, you might still be able to get it in-game regardless. Now, you can only scan each amiibo once per day, and some treasure chests are going to drop some pretty powerful weapons and shields. And honestly, I don't always take them because I don't want to feel too overpowered early on in the game. But the veggies, fruits, and flowers that you get from these amiibo can really help out a lot with making recipes and upgrading your stuff. And for that, I scan them every day. But also because I want the cool unlocks that the Majora's Mask amiibo gives me. So please, I gotta get back to scanning my amiibo! Do you have any Tears of the Kingdom tips yourself? Did you find any of these tips extra helpful? Let us know in the comments down below. We'd love to hear it. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, then why don't you gift that subscribe button some bomb flowers, and then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we put up new videos. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Zion from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.